Hey everyone, John Lorden here. Welcome to a very special episode of BrainScratch. We are following up on last week's episode about the tragic story of what happened to Dylan Bright, and his family wound up commenting on that episode. I've kind of been talking to you guys about that a lot in videos recently, that with the channel getting bigger and bigger, quite often we're having the family find these videos and comment on them. We're going to go through a couple of those comments, but on top of that, Dylan's mother actually reached out and wanted to be sure to speak with me, and we talked and tried to figure out what's the best thing that we can do. We figured continuing to raise exposure to this case is the best thing that we can do, because there are so many unanswered questions that we have. And if you guys saw me last week, you know I had a bunch of questions specifically for Dylan's mother. So with all that said, let's bring her on the show. Hello, Heidi.
Hello.
This is Heidi Strus. I did have the name incorrect last week, so let me get that right now. Heidi, thank you so much for spending time with me, and know that I'm sure you heard it at the end of the last video, but there is a large community of people that really care about cases like this. I know that some people, when we're talking about someone that might have been struggling with drug use or maybe falling into some bad things here or there, some people shy away from that. I'm not one of those people, quite honestly. I will keep featuring these cases because I know there are so many other people that are touched by this case that need and deserve answers, and you really deserve some form of closure to this. And I just want to do everything we can to try to help you with that. So thank you for spending time with us today.
Thank you for what you're doing. It's touching that people such as yourselves, you, and if it wasn't for Web Sleuths, we would have never have been connected to look into the bones. And it's just amazing that people care. And I agree, because of Dylan's history, the police wouldn't even look into it. And that was a delay in him getting entered into the NamUs system. I actually did that myself.
Wow. Yeah. And I also saw, thank you for sending me the documentation you did, but they were pretty clear in the documentation too that someone came to them with all the information about the unidentified person. So it's pretty clear that Web Sleuths was a big factor in all that.
Absolutely. They were, after Janelle, Dylan's grandmother, went to Missing Persons of America and contacted them, a user from Web Sleuths was contacting various people of Dylan from Dylan's Facebook, trying to get in touch with the family. And that's how we got connected. And it was like, hey, you might want to look into these bones.
Yeah.
And that was a smack in the face, because I followed that story. And because it said they didn't know if they were human or animal. And I kept looking for an update, and I didn't see anything. I just assumed they got their answers. It's not Dylan.
Yeah.
And then in November of 2016, when it all came about and I read that unidentified person's report, I knew.
Yeah.
And then I Googled Furnace Pond, and once I realized where that location was, I knew.
Right.
I knew.
Before we get into the details, and we're going to go over several of the details that you sent me as well, I just wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit about Dylan in terms of his likes, his hobbies. What was he like as a kid?
Dylan was very outgoing. He loved sports. He loved antagonizing his siblings. He had a great sense of humor. He loved the outdoors.
Yeah.
He liked to write poetry. Music is a fan favorite for the whole family. Everybody loves music.
Yeah. And we heard that he liked taking walks. Was that actually accurate?
He did like taking walks, and that was one of his biggest means of getting around, is just walking. And he loved nature.
Yeah.
And he was very familiar with his surroundings, and Furnace Pond is actually, I know now that is an area he has frequented.
Okay.
So because of the location, he knew that area.
Yeah.
And once he started getting into mischief at the age of, he was about 14. And, I just couldn't let him smoke marijuana. Can't do it. Sorry. I know about it. We have a problem.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of friction. That's when it all began.
Okay.
And he would run away, and he would come home once he got picked up and laugh how he was hiding in the woods,
right,
watching everything happen. One time he was in the group when the police were asking, have you seen Dylan Bright?
Wow.
Dylan was very, very smart. Okay. Very smart.
Gotcha.
He knew, and I just don't understand. I can't comprehend how. I just feel he was too smart to end up in water.
Yeah. Now, did you ever get a sense of, was there a particular career that he wanted to go after, or where did he want to take his future?
He was in and out of programs. Yeah. Because of difficulty at home. And he eventually wanted to become a drug and alcohol counselor.
Oh, wow.
Because he wanted to help youths such as himself.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I think that's really a shame that obviously we do not have that opportunity now as a society to have someone like that bring that experience to young people. I know someone that does that as well. And it's such an important thing that they have someone to talk to that has actually walked the path and understands the trials and tribulations of addiction. And it's a shame, unfortunately, that Dylan can't help us all with that problem going forward.
Absolutely.
How many siblings does he have?
He has a total of 5 siblings. Okay. He has an older brother on my side and 2 younger sisters. And then on his father's side, he has a little brother and a little sister. Okay,
gotcha. And his father is not in the picture, hasn't really been in the picture throughout his life?
No, not really. Okay. When Dylan turned 18, he did reconnect with his father and his father's side of the family, which he maintained the connection with his grandparents and aunts and uncles.
Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. And did he lived with you, obviously. How long ago did he move out?
Well, Dylan was actually in a program at the age of 18 when he turned 18.
Yeah.
And sadly, he overdosed on cough medicine and spent his 18th birthday in the ICU. Mm-hmm. And then after that, once he turned 18, that was pretty much the end of him living at home.
Gotcha.
He was 18.
Did he formally move out, or did he just kind of take to the road?
No, I'm not going to say formally moved out. He could have come home, but he would have had to have follow house rules.
Yeah.
And definitely would have been no drugs. So he ended up going to a rehab after the hospital stay. And from there, he reconnected with his biological father's side of the family.
Got it.
And he lived with them for a while, and he actually did live with his dad for a little bit. And then he did come back home, and it was brief, maybe a month.
Yeah.
And, then just started bouncing back and forth and started getting himself into legal trouble. So he was in and out of jail.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And just to make it clear, we don't think that his biological father, that there's any aspect of that relationship that has anything to do with what happened to Dylan.
Absolutely not.
Right.
No, okay. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And that's why we're really not going to press too much more into his biological father. I'm curious, when was the last time that you actually communicated with Dylan?
With Dylan, for me, it was on June 19th. And it was a text via text.
Okay.
Of 2015. And Dylan was on house arrest. He had an anklet on.
Right.
Let me just explain how this all happened. There was a situation where Dylan went to, I want to leave names out of it. So he was asked to take things to a pawn shop.
Okay.
And his understanding that these items belonged to the person asking him to take them.
Right.
Shortly thereafter, Dylan learned otherwise and was extremely upset and did not want to go back to jail.
Okay.
And that led him to leave his grandmother's in Pennsylvania, and he cut his anklet off and went to New Jersey, being that that's where he was raised and we lived in that area all of his life.
Yeah.
And his girlfriend was there. So that's what happened. And at the time, shortly after him cutting the anklet off and taking off from his grandmother's, my daughters, his sisters went to New Jersey, and all four of the kids on my side were together. Yeah. They were together, and Dylan was going to turn himself in. He was going to turn himself in, which brings me to the 19th. He messaged me that he had talked to the individual that owned the items, and because he got them all back, he wasn't pressing charges against Dylan. So Dylan felt more relieved, like, okay, it's just going to be a violation. Not that any of it makes it better, you know.
Right.
He was going to be turning himself in.
Yeah.
And didn't get that chance.
I'm sure there would have been some new charge with him, you know, avoiding probation or something for removing the device. And yeah, it probably would have been lesser trouble than he was facing on the original charge. But yeah, that's tough. So you had seen him pretty close to his disappearance then.
We were communicating because I was in Florida at that time.
Yeah.
But the girls, my daughters, his sisters, were in New Jersey.
Okay, so they saw him. Gotcha.
They saw him. They were all, you know, with my oldest son had lived in Pennsylvania at that time.
Yeah.
They were all four together. And my youngest daughter stayed in New Jersey, and she was looking for Dylan. She even went to the New Inn Police Department and to report him missing, and they shrugged her off. He's not missing. We just saw him a few days ago sleeping in a dugout. But yeah, it was just, he's not missing. We just saw him.
Yeah, I think this actually ties into a comment that came in on the last video from Courtney. This is one of your daughters, right?
It's my oldest daughter, yes.
Yeah. And she left a comment talking about, I saw my brother a few days before. I never heard from him again. We agreed that July 1st things would change. He would work out any legal issues he had, and I would bring him to Florida, where our family now resides, and show him a new and better life. I reached him. He wasn't doing drugs at the time of his death. I lost my best friend 3 to 4 days before my birthday. When he didn't call, I knew something was wrong. He never missed a birthday. There is a lot in the story which will be cleared up in the near future. Thank you for your kind words. And she knew that you were already reaching out to me. She mentions that on the thread as well. And Courtney, when you see this, just know our hearts are absolutely with you as well. This is, it's really a terrible thing to go through. And thank you for everything you were doing to try to give him a new opportunity and to move forward from all this. I think that's a pretty amazing sister there. Also, I just wanted to share a comment that Janelle had left on the video. And she was talking about the story where he had left the child that he was babysitting. So her comment here is, he did not leave his niece alone. Look, I am his grandmother. My son and girlfriend were on the porch when Dylan left. I feel you really need to know the whole story before you begin to judge. As his grandmother, yes, he had an addiction, but he is still my grandson, and I love him every day and missing him more than any of you can understand. God does not judge. He loves all of us. Please remember this one day could be your family. And I've talked about this on the channel before, and I echo what you're saying, Janelle. A severe addiction like this affects about 1 in 10 people. So if your family is bigger than 10 people, or your circle of family and friends is bigger than that, there's a very good chance that you have someone in your life that is struggling in a way very similar to this. you might not be aware of it and you might not know it. And I think there's a reaction that some people have where it's easier to look for things where you want to disassociate from these types of people, Oh, well, he was doing drugs, he was doing petty crimes to try to get money together for drugs. I don't have to care about this person. Well, there's a very good chance that in your life at some point, you're going to find out who that person is in your circle of family or friends. And I bet you're not going to be able to flip that switch just as easily. This is someone that is loved by these people. And I think we really need to remember that when we're looking into cases like this. Were there any inconsistencies in last week's video that you wanted to clear up, or anything that we got wrong?
He didn't leave. It's actually his cousin, Janelle. She's been through a lot. He did not leave his cousin alone. They had pulled up and they were going into the house. Dylan did not leave or endanger the welfare of children.
Okay.
Again, it's not okay that he has done other things, stealing and stuff. Yeah. And the only other thing was that it was June 24th. It must have been a typo in her email, in Janelle's email to missing persons.
Okay.
The June 29th, June 24th is the last day. The girls, both his sisters heard from him that day, as well as Janelle heard from him that day. Okay. And then after that, everything stopped. And like Courtney said, we thought for sure her birthday, we would hear from him, and we didn't. And, there are bizarre signs that happened that I know, I can't explain how I got a voicemail from Courtney's phone when she didn't call me on Dylan's birthday. And I had a 5-minute message, and it was 2 songs that were playing from like a Pandora or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was just really bizarre, and it was muffled. And in between the 2 songs was a New Jersey, Rockaway, New Jersey commercial, which is right in that area. Wow. And I took that, as a sign of him trying to communicate. And that was the first moment I realized he may not be with us anymore.
Yeah. But
I wasn't going to give up hope until I had proof.
Yeah, and
I still hope he walks through the door. Even though they say it's DNA, I've asked for the DNA report and I haven't gotten it. And I just want to hear him say, "Hey, Mom,
yeah,
I'm okay."
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, particularly when you're talking about how few remains there are, we're literally talking about like 8 bones of his that were found.
Here's another discrepancy. When we traveled to New Jersey, we were told we could not see the bones by the detectives.
Okay.
But the funeral director let us see the bones. It was very important for Courtney. She had to see the bones.
Yeah. And
I can tell you, at this point, I regret not taking pictures, but we didn't want pictures of that.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
There were more than 6 or 8 bones there. There were a lot more than 6 or 8 bones, but I didn't have that medical examiner's report.
Okay.
So how do I prove this now? How do I prove there were more than a handful of bones there? So if you didn't give me my son, who did you give me?
Right. That's a very strange discrepancy. How many are you talking about? A lot more, like a significant number? A lot more.
The funeral director said there was 90% of him was there.
Yeah, with the report that you sent me that came from the medical examiner, that makes 0 sense. The report is very clear about specifically which bones they relocated, and there was only 8 of them. And we're talking 2 vertebrae, most of his legs, only 1 part of his arm, and that is about it, according to the report.
There were a lot of what looked like ribs. It looked like ribs were there. There were a lot more vertebrae than just 2. Yeah. I'm confused, just like the other thing. The detective, I know you were confused when I said, because I referred to the authorities, and, that's always I'm going to say the prosecutor's office, the detectives is where I got all my information from.
Right.
And, they were saying it was, it's an accident. And then I guess after my saying I can't believe this is an accident, it has been undetermined. So his death certificate does say undetermined.
Yes, yeah, and I know the medical examiner's report that you sent me, which, by the way, is not a typical autopsy, but when you're talking about the materials they have to work with, I can't see how they could do an autopsy.
It's sad to say, I learned a lot watching the Kaylee Anthony case.
Yeah.
Because she was just bones as well. I learned a lot about our situation by watching those segments, that series. And you're correct. They were just bones. There is no autopsy. He was just skeletal remains.
Yeah.
And to let you know, it was a group of kids, young kids that between the ages, I'm going to say 16 and 18, that found him. They were just out exploring, and they knew something didn't look right. And if it was not for that group of amazing kids, we still wouldn't know anything.
Yeah.
Because they found him.
Wow. That's amazing. And when they found him, I know I saw a comment from you that made it seem like he was in the water. Are we talking? Were the remains actually in liquid when they were found?
Correct.
Okay. And is this pond very large?
This pond, there is a larger body of water that seems to run through this pond. Okay. And then this pond runs off underneath the industrial buildings, underneath roads.
Oh.
But again, I was originally told by the detectives that once everything thawed, they were going to be going back out to look for the rest of him.
Yeah.
That changed. It's not happening. It's going to cost too much money.
Now, does the pond, does it run off through like pipes, or is it literally just through the sediment in the ground that it goes under all these areas?
I'm going to say it's just like it turns into like a creek, and I can actually send you pictures.
Okay.
I can send you pictures of the body of water.
Yeah.
And then where it runs off. And I actually have some pictures marked up for a friend of his, like where his bones were found, because his friend wanted to go to the area.
Okay.
So I can share those with you.
Yeah, please do. So does it usually have a pretty heavy flow of water that's going through that pond in particular?
I'm not going to say is it heavy flow. It flows off eventually. There's like a dam.
Okay.
I want to say a waterfall. Is that? But yeah, and that is right where Dylan's bones were found, is right where the water flows over, just flow over like a bed of rocks. But I do hear this water gets high.
Yeah.
And in that area. But I was also told that it's mucky and would be hard to find because they don't have a specific location in that body of water to look.
Did they take dogs out?
I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah, I know that there are certain dogs that are trained. I believe some of them are specifically trained for water searches for body parts, but you don't know if any of that has happened.
I don't know. No, I don't know.
And I'm not sure. I know that most of those organizations would do it in conjunction with local law enforcement. They would at least coordinate with them to make sure it was okay for them to do that. But I do know that some of them are able to be hired privately, and then they kind of work with local law enforcement. It just might be something to think of.
I know that. Yeah, I don't know that, but that's my biggest predicament, is that I'm not a powerful and wealthy person.
Yeah.
So what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the best thing for me is to be living here in Florida, because if I lived in New Jersey, I would most likely be out there myself trying to find him. I've taken a trip up there since his service, and it's very difficult to even be in that area. So
yeah, it's a shame because we have, of course, there's the answers that you're seeking in this, but it's really painful to watch you get emotional about this and know you're also thinking about the fact that there's parts of your son that are still out there.
So he will always be, I'm told he'll always be considered a missing persons until all of him is recovered.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I want his head recovered because I don't know, just see what the condition of his skull at this point. This may very well have been an accident.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's just kind of hard for me to believe, knowing how savvy he was being in and out of wooded areas and
right.
stuff like that. I just don't know how he would have ended up in water.
Yeah. This is one of the tough aspects of interviewing people virtually, Heidi, is I really wish I could give you a hug right now. Just know that I'm really sorry about all this. Now, was anything found with his body suggesting that others might have been with him at the time? Do you know?
No, not that. No,
okay.
No. I just know there was a part of the belt and denim.
It's strange because there even seems to be a discrepancy about the belt. In one report, it makes it sound like only a piece of the belt was found, and we are talking about a cloth belt that also had a buckle on it. But in another report, they're making it sound like the whole belt was there. Do you know which is right?
I do not know which is right because I don't have those items of personality that was found with him.
Yeah.
This is still considered an open investigation until all of him is found.
Yeah. And that's another important thing I think for us to consider is, and that's what's strange about this location, that's not necessarily where he might have passed away, right? Because this is part of this water flow system.
I'm going to say that was probably whatever happened there. There is industrial parks, but there's also a residential building. There's a church. There's an antique shop. And I am blown away. Yeah. How was he in this water for 10 months unnoticed?
Right.
10 months. Unnoticed. There's a basketball court there. 10 months unnoticed. And
yeah, that's really strange.
The bones, his now ex-girlfriend lived right there.
Oh, interesting. How close? How close did she live?
What separated her home from the body of water he was found in is a street and like a parking area for the industrial building he was found behind.
Wow. So that is extremely close.
Extremely close. So why, when these bones were found, didn't she think, hey?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Have you spoken to her?
We've been in touch, but she swears she had nothing to do with it.
Do we know when she last saw him?
Well, there is a discrepancy there too, because it's my understanding they got into an argument a couple days before the 24th and they hadn't spoken, but I have since been told that she was with him that day. Okay. So I don't know. And again, I sent you, there was a police stop that night about 11:35, 11:45. I don't have the document in front of me.
Yeah.
So the last individuals to see Dylan alive were the two individuals he was with at that time, as well as the Netcong police.
Right. And this is a stop that happened on, it was almost midnight, 23:35. It was a Wednesday, June 24th, 2015. And basically, this police officer tried to stop 3 young men because there was a bike theft that was called in the area, and he was going to ask them about it. One of the guys stopped immediately. 2 of them kind of kept walking. He yelled out again. Then a second one stopped, but the third one started jogging, kind of hit a corner and disappeared. And that turned out to be Dylan, is what we understand.
Correct. And the corner that he's saying he turned, that is the road that leads down towards the pond area. And see, this is a discrepancy with the detectives. They told me Dylan was last seen running from the train station, that he was running towards the pond. That's not true. That police report proves them wrong. Like there's so many things I was told that I have factual documentation to prove that I don't know the words I want right now.
Yeah, no, I think you also cleared up a point that I brought up on last week's video about the comment you made about that people had seen him running off in that direction. So it's coming from this particular police report, this guy's interaction, which, by the way, this officer also says that he recognizes Dylan, but doesn't remember his name until the 2 guys that he did stop told him his name. And then there's a really strange sentence in there that, let me just read this for everyone because I'm not even sure what to make out of this sentence. The male who kept walking I recognized from previous incidents. Upon questioning the other subjects, they informed me his name was Dylan Bright. After learning the subject's name, I was immediately able to identify him as the person running from me. It is just a very strange wording of that. And I quite honestly, I don't know what the point of that sentence is. I don't know what he's trying to say because he's saying, oh, yeah, I think I recognize the guy, but I didn't know his name. And then once I heard his name, oh, that's definitely the guy that I recognized. I think that's what he's trying to say. Do you have any better understanding of it?
I'm confused. I really am. I don't know what to think. I don't know. Forgive me. I don't know if something's being covered up.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think.
So do you know if he had a wallet?
I'm not sure if he had a wallet at that time.
Okay.
We don't think the last physical time I saw Dylan was actually March of that year.
Yeah.
I was in New Jersey and we got together and he had an identification and stuff at that time. I'm not sure if when he left his grandmother's house, did he have his wallet on him? I don't know.
Oh, that's actually probably a good question. Are you in contact with Janelle?
Yes. Yeah.
I would just check in with her and see if she found his identification anywhere, just to know.
Never thought of that. But
yeah. Just check into that because otherwise we know that there's information that quite typically, this became an unidentified person. Something was missing there in terms of either him not having a wallet or his ID not being on him. I think it might help clarify the image a little bit to have some of that info.
I will check with her when we're done. I'll give her a call.
Okay. On top of that, I've heard that he didn't have a cell phone, but you're saying, did he text you on the 19th?
Yeah, he had a cell phone. It just wasn't active. Okay. And you can use cell phones now when you're in a Wi-Fi area.
Right.
So that would be how he communicated, or would use a friend's phone to call. But he would block the number, just
right.
because he would fear that we would send the police.
Yeah.
Like I said, we knew he was on the run, and our biggest goal was to get him to turn himself in, which he was going to do.
Yeah.
And just never got that opportunity.
I don't want to get anyone in trouble, so don't answer this. But if someone happened to have his login information, particularly if he had a Google account, there is Google history that kind of tracks everywhere you go, and that includes Wi-Fi information. So it might be helpful if someone was able to log into his information.
I have that. I actually have all that information.
Okay.
Due to him being in jail one time, he sent me his login information to write to his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So I have full access of his Facebook. He did have multiple Facebooks, but at the time this happened, he was utilizing one, and I have access to that one.
Okay.
And I moderate it. You know, we post on it all the time. It's an outlet. So
yeah. Did he have a Google ID?
He did a Gmail. Yeah, he had a Gmail account.
Have you looked into the location history on that?
I did not, but I will be.
Yeah, please do. There's a feature specifically called Google Location History. Just check into that. Yeah, check it.
Too old at this point, you think, or?
I think it's worth a shot. I don't think so. I've looked at mine, and it definitely tracks what I've done in previous years. So yeah.
Okay, then I will be doing that as well.
Yeah. Okay, so he had some type of cell phone, even if it wasn't active. That's another physical item that should have been with him that we haven't found.
Correct.
Okay, and maybe that's something else to ask Janelle when you speak to her. Just did she happen to find his? I'm sure she would have told you that she did.
She knew he had it. He had it.
Okay,
and that is something that we did discuss. So yeah, no, he did have that item of personality with him.
Gotcha. So we know he did have a girlfriend in the area. Was he staying with her?
No, I don't think he was staying with her.
Okay.
I don't think that was permitted by her parents.
Okay. Gotcha.
He would tell me he was staying with friends and that he was okay. And
yeah, that's literally the last text you got was basically that exact information, right? That he was staying at a friend's house. And
he was staying at a friend's house, and that he was going to be turning himself in.
Okay, gotcha. Did the medical examiners or the prosecutor's office or any of the investigators, did anyone give you any theories about why, according to the report, there's, like we talked about, there's only 8 bones. Did they ever address with you why they thought there was so little remains left there?
They could be in the water, animal activity.
Okay.
I mean, I can understand being in the water for that long, how things may fall off.
Right.
You know, and the bones in our hands and our feet. I understand. Where's his head?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Where's his head, and why aren't we actively looking for it?
Was there any dangerous terrain around this area?
Dangerous.
Like in terms of an accident potentially happening, could he have fallen from someplace or something along those lines?
He could have.
Okay.
He could have, because there's like a cliff, and then there's a drop that would be right onto rocks.
Okay. Is that close to where the remains were found?
It's when I send you the pictures, it'll make sense to you.
Okay.
The rocks come after where his remains were found.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah. Okay.
You know, it's like my thinking is he somehow entered the body of water, and then as it flowed down, it flowed towards where it could be dangerous.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the possibility of animal activity. Did they confirm with you that they did notice any types of scratches or marks?
No.
No. Did they tell you what types of animals in that particular area might have done something?
Having lived in, and I mean, we didn't live in Netcong. We lived in Newton, which was maybe 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm sure there's bears and, you know, deer.
Okay.
Coyotes, you know.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I think deer are vegetarian, so I don't think that would have. But yeah, coyotes for sure. The report states that part of his clothing was found, but it was shredded. Did they do any type of analysis in terms of how his clothes was shredded? What could have caused it to happen? Because, you know, we're talking about being out there for less than a year, and for the clothing to just like completely deteriorate kind of strikes me as weird a little bit.
See, I wouldn't know those things. No, no, I wasn't told anything. I don't know if that was looked into.
Okay.
No.
So one other thing that happened in the report that you sent me, the officer mentioned that he had previous incidents with Dylan. Did you ever find any reports about those previous incidents with this specific officer and Dylan?
No, nor did I look into that. And is that good question. Is that something I should be looking into?
Maybe. I mean, just to get a bit of a better understanding of, his report's pretty strong that he had some type of handling or dealings with Dylan previously. I'd be curious just to know how many instances are we talking about? And because they're written by him, it might give you a bit of tone for how he felt about Dylan or how he would have treated Dylan, things along those lines. I would certainly try to do those.
That's great insight. It really is.
Okay.
Like this is the other situation that happened with the detective saying that they wouldn't meet with us to take us to the location and that we could try the Netcong police and maybe they would. Thankfully, they did. Otherwise, when we first arrived to New Jersey, the first thing we did was go to the area and try and figure it out on our own because the detective said, oh, sorry, that's not something we can do. They didn't even want to meet with us. Like, you've met with persons of interest, but you're not going to meet with us, the family?
Yeah.
So the officer, I don't remember his name at this time, from the Netcong police who took us back behind the industrial building was amazing. I mean, he gave us a lot of information as to where Dylan was found and whereabouts in the water. And if it weren't for him, we wouldn't have known. And that's not true because two of the children, I say children, teens, that found Dylan came to his service.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we've met, we didn't meet all of them, but at a later date before we returned to Florida, we did get a group together and I just think they're amazing kids because of what they did.
Yeah, I think they're pretty amazing too. If you kids, young men happen to see
young
this.
men and women.
And women. Good to know. Thank you guys for being so brave and doing the right thing on that. We really appreciate it. The two men that were with Dylan when this police officer bumped into them, were they questioned about this case in particular, about Dylan?
I would hope so.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't know.
I do not know who the detective spoke to. I do know they spoke to the girlfriend because she let us know that she was contacted.
Okay.
She's the only one I know that they spoke to. One of the young men that was with Dylan was a Facebook friend of his. Mm-hmm. And when we went public with everything, he deleted Dylan. So I thought that was rather interesting. And it took us a while to get the police report just because of us being down here and kind of not wanting, it's hard to deal with.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we did eventually get the police report. And then once I saw his name, we thought that was interesting.
Yeah, man.
Because he was definitely a person we knew he was with or suspected he was with at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He never came forward, never said, hey, I was with Dylan that night. This is what happened. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do that when you see our pleas on his Facebook page? Why wouldn't you just come forward and say, hey, unless you have something to hide?
Yeah. Although, let me just put out there, it's never too late. And if you're watching this video, look at how hurt this family is. There might be some information you have to help them. So if you do happen to see this and you can find it within yourself, please share the information with them. Just let them know what was going on that last time. And this is the last time that we have a confirmed sighting of Dylan, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So you mentioned one friend and his Facebook stuff. What about the other friend? Did you ever try to reach out to the second guy?
No,
Okay.
I just holding my cards, if you will.
Yeah.
Not trying. I just don't know if it's the right thing.
That's a really good question, and I wish I had a solid answer for you. If this was a missing persons investigation, it would be very different, and I would say yes, you should shake every tree you can.
Absolutely. And you know what? Janelle was amazing at that.
Yeah.
Before we got the confirmation, Janelle was absolutely amazing. She would go on page, his friends' pages and post, and she was a huge advocate in trying to find Dylan. And we got a lot of dead end tips. And because I'm in Florida, she's in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Her and her husband would go investigate these tips, and they would be dead ends, which led her to filing a missing persons in September of 2015.
Right.
Because her residence was the last known address, and we just felt it was best for her to do it. What would filing a missing persons do for me down here in Florida?
Right.
He was never here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. They wouldn't even take the report down there, most likely.
Yeah.
And just also worth pointing out, Janelle is Dylan's father's mother.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I do think it's pretty amazing that you guys are able to support each other in the way that you have through all this.
We have it. I think it brought us closer, and we're in touch. And during that time, we were constantly in touch. Like, I saw this, I heard this, and it.
Yeah. So we have no confirmed sightings of Dylan, or even rumored sightings of Dylan, kind of after.
We did. We did in August of 2015. Someone had, I think, messaged one of the girls, being his sisters, that he was seen at the fair, working a stand at the fair.
Okay.
And Janelle and Danny, his grandparents, went and investigated that, and it was a dead end.
Okay.
And they went to the state police as well as the Newton Police Department, and they were of no help. And then I think that is when, come September, which was a couple weeks after the fair, maybe even a month after the fair was in Sussex County, where we resided previously, she went to her local police department and filed the missing persons. But again, they weren't interested in anything because, look at his history.
Right.
Maybe he's just laying low. No, you don't understand.
Yeah.
We know what Dylan did, and it didn't stop us from having that communication. Mm-hmm. He always stayed in touch. Maybe he didn't call me all the time or his nana all the time, but I tell you, his siblings, they heard from him. Yeah. They would know where he was.
Yeah.
And my youngest daughter was in New Jersey at that time, and she was looking for him. They were supposed to be getting together, for dinner or something like that. Wow. He wouldn't have stood her up.
Right.
Right. Just because he made poor choices doesn't mean he was a horrible person.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. So theories that we've kind of touched on here. First of all, some type of accidental death. It sounds like the authorities were trying to get you to possibly believe that possibly a drug overdose could have potentially happened here. I'm getting that from the media reports. So
an accident. Say that again. I'm sorry.
I got that more from the media reports, the way that they were quoting you talking about this. So
I was pretty much just acknowledging that I know Dylan wasn't a saint.
Okay.
And it wasn't. I do not believe based upon what I've heard, I believe alcohol may have been involved that night.
Okay.
But I don't think he was using. I don't think he was using. Nor would he intentionally. He wouldn't intentionally do anything. But I don't think he was using that night.
Okay.
Alcohol, I was confirmed through the prosecutor. Detectives confirmed that there was alcohol. So I'm assuming they had to have talked to those two gentlemen.
Yeah. Obviously, they wouldn't have got that from any type of testing on the remains that we're talking about. So.
Correct.
Okay. So overdose, in your eyes, not very likely. Accident of some kind. We've kind of talked about the area. Could be a little treacherous, but doesn't seem like a natural accident.
No. I have trouble believing that, knowing Dylan the way I do.
Yeah.
When he's familiar with an area and knowing, and it's not something to be proud of as a mother that my son could, lay in the woods safely.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I can laugh at that now. I mean, again, I know it's not something to be proud of, but that's Dylan.
Yeah. Some people are outdoors people. I mean, yeah.
He would have removed himself from the situation and waited.
Right.
Because he's done it before.
Yeah.
So I have great difficulty believing he himself accidentally somehow got in that water.
So the possibilities that we're looking at are these two guys that he was hanging out, possibly being involved, maybe as a result of some of this interaction. Maybe were they upset at him because he ran off and they both stayed behind? I don't know, but there's some potential.
I don't know.
Some potential around that. The other potential, which you really lightly touched on, and quite honestly, we don't have nearly enough information, is that for some reason, law enforcement had something to do maybe with obstructing this coming out in some way or something along those lines. I don't
know. My mind constantly goes. The scenarios just don't stop.
Yeah. I hear you.
And not that it would make it any better, but the not knowing is horrible.
Yeah.
Not that it would make it better to say, hey, you know what? It was drug overdose. He died of a drug overdose. He died of cancer. He died in a car accident. He died, to know what happened, but to not know.
Right.
And parts of him are still out there somewhere.
Yeah. And then you have this question of justice completely untouched and unanswered, because you don't know if someone deserves to pay for what happened to him or not.
And maybe not.
Right.
Maybe not.
Right. Wow. One of the statements I noticed in my review last week was that Paul Merkler said that the cause of death was pending further investigation. Have you been given any updates or told about what steps they'd be taking, or?
No, I did hear from, he's actually, I think, the officer that told me, or detective that told me, this isn't CSI and it doesn't happen in an hour.
Oh, gotcha.
Because I was reviewing a letter that I wrote to Dylan's father outlining everything, and I remembered a name, whatever the case may be. No, I did hear from one of the detectives back in January, and I thought, oh my God, they found something or they know something. And I had missed the call because I work overnights and I was sleeping. Mm-hmm. So when I returned her call, it was just, have you heard anything? Do you have any information? And I'm like, what information am I supposed to have?
Right.
And it's pretty much that, it's his case is not closed, but is being moved to the inactive list.
Yeah.
Find his head. Find his skull. Find his skull, and see what condition it's in. Yeah. And then maybe I can accept, okay, well, maybe this is an accident. I think that would be the easiest way, in my opinion, to bring some type of closure. Because again, if this was their son or their coworker's son, grandson, uncle, nephew, friend, they'd be looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
They wouldn't just be like, oh, well.
Yeah, I get this weird feeling that it feels like he's being left behind in some way. And it makes me uncomfortable.
Me too. And you know what? You care more than they do. And Web Sleuths cared more than they do.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for this amazing community that I didn't even know was out there, I just can't begin to tell you how it makes me feel as his mom when I saw your broadcast and I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm like, I can't believe this. And, you know, it's very, very touching.
Yeah, and let me talk to that community. You guys know how much I appreciate you guys, how awesome you are, having these big open hearts, just like we're hearing from Heidi here. This case is not done. There are still more answers that we need. And if we are talking about a situation where something might have happened to him that was done by someone else, there's a very good chance that someone has heard something or saw something, and that information for some reason has not come forward. And maybe you're a person sitting there saying, you know what, yeah, but I did call the cops and I did talk to them about this, or I did try to get that tip in. Maybe you need to run it through again if you're really feeling confident about it, because sometimes it takes more than one knock on the head to get these things kind of in place and to get people to act on them. And we need help here. I think that's really what's clear with Heidi. It's just, I don't want you, I mean, you have other children, you have a life, and these things can become very consuming. There are some people that would throw themselves into, I'm now a private investigator working on, you know, my family member's case. And there has to be a fine line where you're still taking care of yourself and your other family. It doesn't mean you love Dylan any less. Yeah,
but it's hard, especially like birthdays and when we all sit together and hear the stories about, you know, the things you don't want your mom to know about. And right. I'm never going to hear Dylan's stories.
Yeah.
And he's missed a lot. It was a huge loss for all of us when I hear my daughter say, oh, well, I can never get married because I don't have my man of honor to stand up for me.
Yeah.
We do our best to keep it together. I know I do, because I don't like to upset the kids, even though they're older, you know. But we just had a celebration of life for him on June 23rd.
Yeah.
It was exactly what we needed. There were happy tears. It wasn't, I originally wanted to go to New Jersey and then realized that would have been too sad for me. And we had an amazing turnout here, and we had a great weekend. It was a weekend event, and it was amazing. And then followed up by your segment.
Oh, wow.
You know, a few days later, it's kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like things just won't stop moving for you on this case.
Yeah.
Well, please be sure to remember that those events make you feel like that, and keep those events going. Keep having.
We're going to do it every year. I have plans for Dylan. I don't get to spoil him anymore, so I spoiled him a lot on the 23rd.
Awesome.
It was we had a water slide, and it was just great. And I do want to do it every year. And Dylan had talked about traveling across the United States to end up in California on the beach selling tie-dye shirts, because he loves tie-dye. And I'm looking into, it's just going to cost some money first. I need to save some money to start Dylan's dream. And then I'm going to pick a state every year, and we're going to pick an organization that we want to fundraise for by selling his shirts, or however else we can do it, and donate. And At the end of the year, we'll have his celebration. We'll announce that this is what we raised and it's going to so-and-so.
Yeah.
And then we'll announce our new fundraiser and, who we're going to sponsor and, and that's my dream, to make Dylan's dream come true. And I can keep it going for 52 years. So there's 52 feet.
Awesome. Heidi, I just got chills with you talking about that. Please be sure to get that going. And when you do, let me know about it. I'd love to let everyone else know that.
Absolutely. I will. I've already designed a tie-dye shirt. It's just a matter. I looked into, I have to get the business plan up and, I'm hoping by next year's event that will be incorporated, or a nonprofit.
Yeah.
A nonprofit. But right now I send money every month to a scholarship fund that we have set up for him through the Center for Prevention and Counseling in Newton, New Jersey. That was huge in our lives when we lived there.
Yeah.
They helped with services for Dylan, as well as before things got difficult for him. He was, all of the children attended the Center for Youth that was through the Center for Prevention and Counseling. And it was a great program.
Do they have a website?
I'm pretty sure they do.
Okay. If I can find that, I'm going to have it in the description box below as well for everyone to check out.
My computer's right here. So let me... Oh, you know what? I'll look into that and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, just send it to me. And on behalf of myself and my supporters on both Patreon and PayPal, we're going to make a donation to them as well.
Oh my God.
In Dylan's memory.
And Dylan's, yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You got it.
I appreciate that. That makes me so happy to know that, because that's the way we keep him alive is. Yeah. Through the Center for Prevention right now. And specifically is the CLEAR program. And that is anybody who is on heroin can walk into the police station and turn themselves, I'm not going to say turn themselves in, but turn over their drugs and paraphernalia without any consequence, and be set up with services through the Center for Prevention.
Oh, and wow.
Dylan may have done what he did, but heroin, he was, that was not something he ever did. Yeah.
And so many of our friends and family are being affected by that in this country right now and around the world. So yeah, I definitely would do anything to support that. Yeah. Well, give me that information. We will make a donation. Oh, you're very welcome. And on top of that, tie-dye number 1 needs to be sent to Minnesota for myself. I'm first to buy the tie-dyes when they're ready to go. So you let me know.
Okay. It's just a matter of money, and we will get there. We will get there. I need to figure it all out, and I just think it's going to be an amazing thing. And then he'll be known everywhere. So
yeah, that's an awesome dream. All right, Heidi, thank you so much. Anything you want to say before we go?
I can't thank you enough for what you're doing, what you've done, and thank you for taking an interest in Dylan. I thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're really, really welcome. I wish there was much more that we can do, and thank you for taking this time and being open to share your thoughts and feelings on all of this so that we can keep raising exposure. This is a very big step in this process as well, so thank you.
I agree. The family agrees. We do. We agree.
Please send all my best to all the siblings as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You got it. Take care, and please sit tight. I'll be right back with you. Everyone, that was Heidi, Dylan's mother. Very moved after that conversation. It's a bit different than, most of the time I'm talking to family members of missing people, and this is such a different situation because it's weird from law enforcement's perspective. It almost looks like they have their answer or as much of an answer as they can get. And we're not really sure if they're going to look for any more than the answers they currently have. They're open to the answers, but as we heard from Heidi, they're kind of calling people saying, hey, have you heard anything? It's a very tough place for this family to be in, and I really appreciate that so many of you out there were so supportive of last week's video. I know are supportive of this week's as well. I think it really helps these families by knowing that there's so many good people out there that care and that are willing to try to help on this case. So as usual, in the description box below, you will find contact information if you are someone that has a tip, and you might not think it's very important, but it might be the piece that actually moves things forward significantly. So please use that contact information and send it in. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here on your Friday. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new case cracked on the Lord and Arts channel.